The Life of a Bum. A short story by Charles Bukowski. Harry awakened in his bed, hungover. Badly hungover. Shit, he said lightly. There was a small sink in the room. Harry got up, relieved himself in the sink, washed it away with the spigot, then he stuck his head under there and drank some water. Then he splashed water on his face and dried off with a portion of the undershirt he was wearing. The year was 1943. Harry picked some clothing up off the floor and slowly began to dress. The shades were down and it was dark except where the sunlight slipped in through the torn shades. There were 2 windows. A class place. He walked down the hall to the bathroom, locked the door and sat down. It was amazing that he could still excrete. He hadn't eaten for days. Christ, he thought, people have intestines, mouths, lungs, ears, belly buttons, sexual parts, and hair, paws, tongues, sometimes teeth, and all the other parts, fingernails, eyelashes, toes, knees, stomachs. There was something so weary about all that. Why didn't anybody complain? Harry finished with the rough rooming house toilet paper. You can bet the landladies wiped themselves with something better. All those religious landladies with their long dead husbands. He pulled up his pants, flushed, walked out of there, down the rooming house stairway and into the street. It was 11 a.m. He walked south. The hangover was brutal but he didn't mind. It told him he had been somewhere else, someplace good. As he walked along he found half a cigarette in his shirt pocket. He stopped, looked at the crushed and blackened end, found a match, then tried to light up. The flame didn't catch. He kept trying. After the 4th match, which burned his fingers, he was able to get a puff. He gagged, then coughed. He felt his stomach quiver. A car came driving by. It was filled with 4 young men. "Hey, you old fart. Die." One of them screamed at Harry. The others laughed. Then they were gone. Harry's cigarette was still lit. He took another drag. A curl of blue smoke rose. He liked that curl of blue smoke. He walked along in the warm sun thinking, I am walking and I am smoking a cigarette. Harry walked until he got to the park across from the library. He kept dragging on a cigarette. Then he felt the heat from the butt and reluctantly tossed it away. He entered the park and walked until he found a place between a statue and some brush. The statue was of Beethoven. And Beethoven was walking, head bowed, hands clasped behind him, obviously thinking of something. Harry got down and stretched out on the grass. The mowed grass itched quite a bit. It was pointed, sharp, but it had a good clean smell. The smell of peace. Tiny insects began to swarm about his face, making irregular circles, crossing each other's paths but never colliding. They were only specks but the specks were searching for something. Harry looked up through the specks at the sky. The sky was blue, and tall as hell. Harry kept looking up at the sky, trying to get something straight. But Harry got nothing. No feeling of eternity. Or God. Not even the devil. But you had to find God first in order to find the devil. They came in that order. Harry didn't like heavy thoughts. Heavy thoughts could lead to heavy errors. He thought a little bit about suicide then in an easy way. Like most men would think about buying a new pair of shoes. The main problem with suicide was the thought that it might lead to something worse. What he really needed was a nice cold bottle of beer, the label soaked just so, and with those chilled beads so beautiful on the surface of the glass. Harry began to doze to be awakened by the sound of voices. The voices of very young schoolgirls. They were giggling, laughing. Oh, look. He's asleep. Should we wake him up? Harry squinted in the sun, peeking at them through nearly closed eyes. He wasn't sure how many there were but he saw their colorful dresses. Yellow and red and blue and green. Look. He's beautiful. They giggled, laughed, ran off. Harry closed his eyes again. What had that been about? Nothing so refreshingly delightful had ever happened to him before. They had called him beautiful. Such kindness. But they wouldn't be back. He got up and walked to the edge of the park. There was the avenue. He found a park bench and sat down. There was another bum on the next bench. He was much older than Harry. The bum had a heavy, dark, grim feel about him which reminded Harry of his father. No, thought Harry, I'm being unkind. The bum glanced toward Harry. The bum had tiny blank eyes. Harry gave him a slight smile. The bum turned away. Then some noise came from the avenue. Engines. It was an army convoy. A long line of trucks filled with soldiers. The soldiers brimmed over, they were packed in, they hung out over the sides of the trucks. The world was at war. The convoy moved slowly. The soldiers saw Harry sitting on the park bench. Then it began. It was an admixture of hissing, booing and cursing. They were screaming at him. Hey, you son of a bitch. Slacker. As each truck in the convoy passed, the next truck picked it up. Get your ass off that bench. Coward. Fucking faggot. Yellow belly. It was a very long and a very slow convoy. Come on and join us. We'll teach you how to fight, freak. The faces were white and brown and black, flowers of hatred. Then the old bum rose up from his park bench and screamed at the convoy. I'll get him for you fellows. I fought in World War I. Those in the passing trucks laughed and waved their arms. You get him, Pops. Make him see the light. Then the convoy was gone. They had thrown things at Harry. Empty beer cans, soft drink cans, oranges, a banana. Harry got up, picked up the banana, sat back down, peeled it and ate it. It was wonderful. Then he found an orange, peeled it and chewed and gulped the pulp and the juice. He found another orange and ate that. Then he found a cigarette lighter someone had thrown or dropped. He flicked it. It worked. He walked down to the bum sitting on the bench, holding the lighter out. Hey, buddy, got a smoke? The bum's little eyes fastened upon Harry. They had a flat quality as if the pupils had been removed. The bum's lower lip quivered. You like Hitler, don't ya? He said very quietly. Look, buddy, Harry said, why don't you and I take off together? Maybe we can score for a drink. The old bum's eyes rolled in his head. For a moment all that Harry saw were the whites of his bloodshot eyes. The eyes then rolled back. The bum looked at him. Not with you. Okay, said Harry, see you around. The old bum's eyes rolled again and he said it once again, only louder. Not with you. Harry walked slowly out of the park and up the street toward his favorite bar. The bar was always there. Harry moored at the bar. It was his one haven. It was merciless and exact. On the way Harry came to a vacant lot. A bunch of middle-aged men were playing softball. They were out of shape. Most had pot bellies, were small of stature, had large butts, almost like women. They were all 4 or too old for the draft. Harry stood and watched the game. There were many strikeouts, wild pitches, hit batters, errors, badly hit balls, but they kept playing. Almost as a ritual, a duty. And they were angry. The one thing they were good at was anger. The energy of their anger dominated. Harry stood watching. Everything seemed a waste. Even the softball seemed sad, bouncing about uselessly. Hello, Harry, how come you're not down at the bar? It was old Thin Macduff, puffing his pipe. Macduff was around 62, he always looked straight forward, he never looked at you but he saw you anyhow from behind those rimless glasses. And he was always dressed in a black suit and blue necktie. He came into the bar each day about noon, had 2 beers, then left. And you couldn't hate him and you couldn't like him. He was like a calendar or a pen holder. I'm on my way, Harry answered. I'll walk with you, said Macduff. So Harry walked along with old Thin Macduff and old Thin Macduff puffed on his pipe. Macduff always kept that pipe lit. That was his thing. Macduff was his pipe. Why not? They walked along, not talking. There was nothing to say. They stopped at traffic lights, Macduff puffing at his pipe. Macduff had saved his money. He had never married. He lived in a 2-room apartment and didn't do much. Well, he read the newspapers but not with much interest. He wasn't religious. But it wasn't out of non-conviction. It was simply because he hadn't bothered to consider the aspect one way or the other. It was like not being a Republican because one didn't know what Republican was. Macduff was neither happy nor unhappy. Once in a while he became a bit of a fidget. something would appear to bother him, and for a tiny moment terror would fill his eyes. Then it left quickly like a fly that had landed, then zoomed away for more promising territory. Then they were at the bar. They walked in. The usual crowd. Macduff and Harry found their stools. 2 beers, good old Macduff intoned to the barkeep. "How ya doin', Harry?" one of the bar patrons asked. "Gropin', shakin' and shittin'," Harry answered. He felt bad for Macduff. Nobody had greeted him. Macduff was a blotter on a desk. He didn't make an impression on them. They noticed Harry because he was a bum. He made them feel superior. They needed that. Macduff just made them feel bland, and they were already bland. Not much happened. Everybody sat over their drinks, nursing them. Few had the imagination to simply get piss-ass drunk. A stale Saturday afternoon. Macduff went for his second beer and was kind enough to buy another for Harry. Macduff's pipe was red hot from 6 hours of continuous firing. He finished his second beer and walked out, and then Harry sat there alone with the remainder of the crew. It was a slow Saturday, but Harry knew if he could hang in long enough he could make it. Saturday night was best, of course, for bumming drinks. But there was no place to go until then. Harry was ducking the landlady at the rooming house. He paid by the week and he was 9 days behind. It got very deadly between drinks. The patrons, they just needed to sit and be somewhere. There was a general loneliness and a gentle fear and the need to be together and chat a bit. It eased them. All Harry needed was something to drink. Harry could drink forever and still need more. There wasn't enough drink to satisfy him. But the others, they just sat, talking now and then about whatever they talked about. Harry's beer was getting flat. And the idea was not to finish it because then you had to buy another and he didn't have the money. He had to wait and hope. As a professional bummer of drinks, Harry knew the first rule. You never asked for one. His thirst was their joke and any demand by him subtracted from their joy of giving. Harry let his eyes drift down the bar. There were 4 or 5 patrons in there. Not many and not much. One of the not much was Monk Hamilton. Monk's biggest claim to immortality was that he ate 6 eggs for breakfast. Every day. He thought that gave him an edge. He wasn't good at thinking. He was huge, almost as wide as he was tall, with pale steady unworried eyes, oak tree neck, big knotted hairy hands. Monk was talking to the bartender. Harry watched a fly crawl into the beer-wet ashtray before him. The fly walked around in there between the butts, pushed against a sotted cigarette, then it made an angry buzz, rose straight up, then seemed to fly backwards, and to the left, and then was gone. Monk was a window washer. His bland eyes saw Harry. His thick lips twisted into a superior grin. He picked up his bottle, walked down, took the stool next to Harry. "What ya doin', Harry?" "Waiting for it to rain." "How about a beer?" "Waiting for it to rain beer, Monk." "Thanks." Monk ordered 2 beers. They came along. Harry liked to drink his right out of the bottle. Monk dumped some of his into a glass. "Harry, you need a job." "Haven't thought about it. All ya gotta do is hold the ladder." "We need a ladder man. It doesn't pay as good as upstairs work but you get something." "How about it?" Monk was making a joke. Monk thought Harry was too screwed up to know that. "Give me some time to think about it, Monk." Monk looked down at the other patrons, let his superior grin loose again, winked at them, then looked back at Harry. "Listen, all you gotta do is hold the ladder steady. I'll be up there cleaning the windows. All you gotta do is hold the ladder steady. That's not too hard, is it?" "Not as hard as a lot of things, Monk." "Then you'll do it." "I don't think so." "Come on, why don't ya give it a try?" "I can't do it, Monk." They all felt good then. Harry was their boy. The excellent fool. Harry looked at all those bottles behind the bar. All those good times waiting, all that laughter, all that madness, scotch, whiskey, wine, gin, vodka and all the others. Yet those bottles stood there, unused. It was like a life waiting to be lived that nobody wanted. "Listen," said Monk, "I'm going to get a haircut." Harry felt Monk's quiet thickness. Monk had once something somewhere. He fit, like a key in a lock that opened to somewhere. Why don't you come with me while I get a haircut? Harry didn't answer. Monk leaned closer. We'll stop for a beer on the way and I'll buy you one afterwards. Let's go. Harry emptied his bottle easily into his thirst, put the bottle down. He followed Monk out the door. They walked down the street together. Harry felt like a dog following his master. And Monk was calm. He was functioning, everything fit. It was his Saturday off and he was going to get a haircut. They found a bar and stopped there. It was much nicer and cleaner than the one Harry usually bummed at. Monk ordered the beers. How he sat there. A man's man. And a comfortable one at that. He never thought about death, at least not his own. As they sat side by side, Harry knew he had made a mistake. An 8 to 5 job would be less painful. Monk had a mole on the right side of his face, a very relaxed mole, a non-self-conscious mole. Harry watched Monk pick up his bottle and suck on it. It was only something Monk did, like scratching his nose. He wasn't hungry for a drink. Monk just sat there with his bottle and it was paid for. And time was going by like shit down a river. They finished their bottles and Monk said something to the bartender and the bartender answered something. Then Harry followed Monk out the door. They were together and Monk was going to get a haircut. They found the barber shop and entered. There were no other customers. The barber knew Monk. As Monk clambered into the chair they said something to each other. The barber spread the sheet and Monk's head loomed out of there, mole steady on right cheek, and he said, short around the ears and not too much off the top. Harry, in agony for another drink, picked up a magazine, turned some pages and pretended to be interested. Then he heard Monk speaking to the barber, by the way, Paul, this is Harry. Harry, this is Paul. Paul and Harry and Monk. Monk and Harry and Paul. Harry, Monk, Paul. Look, Monk, said Harry, maybe I'll go down and get another beer while you're getting your haircut. Monk's eyes fixed on Harry. No, we'll get a beer after I'm finished here. Then his eyes fixed on the mirror. Not too much off around the ears, Paul. As the world turned, Paul snipped away. Been getting much, Monk? Nothing, Paul. I don't believe that. You better believe it, Paul. Not from what I hear. Like what? Like when Betsy Ross made that flag, 13 stars wouldn't have wrapped around your pole. Ah, shit, Paul, you're too much. Monk laughed. His laugh was like linoleum being sliced by a dull knife. Or maybe it was a death cry. Then he stopped laughing. Not too much off the top. Harry put the magazine down and looked at the floor. The linoleum laugh had transferred into a linoleum floor. Green and blue, with purple diamonds. An old floor. Patches of it had begun to peel, showing the dark brown flooring beneath. Harry liked the dark brown. He began counting. 3 barber chairs, 5 waiting chairs, 13 or 14 magazines. 1 barber. 1 customer. 1 what? Paul and Harry and Monk and the dark brown. The cars went by outside. Harry started counting, stopped. Don't play with madness. Madness doesn't play. Easier to count the drinks on hand. None. Time rang like a blank bell. Harry was conscious of his feet in his shoes, then of his toes on the feet in his shoes. He wiggled his toes. His all-consuming life going nowhere like a snail crawling toward the fire. Leaves were growing upon stems. Antelopes raised their heads from grazing. A butcher in Birmingham raised his cleaver. And Harry sat waiting in a barber shop, hoping for a beer. He was without honor, a dog without a day. It went on, it went by, it went on, and then it was over. The end of the barber chair play. Paul spun Monk so he could view himself in the mirrors behind the chair. Harry hated barbershops. That final spin in the chair, those mirrors, they were a moment of horror for him. Monk didn't mind. He looked at himself. He studied his reflection, face, hair, all. He seemed to admire what he saw. Then, he spoke. Okay now, Paul, will you take a little off the left side? And you see that little piece sticking out there? That should be cleaned up. Oh, yeah, Monk. I'll get it. The barber spun Monk back and concentrated upon the little piece that stuck out. Harry watched the scissors. There was much clicking but not much cutting. Then Paul spun Monk toward the mirrors again. Monk looked at himself. A slight smile curled up the right side of his mouth. Then the left side of his face gave a little twitch. Self-love with only a twinge of doubt. "That's good," he said, "now you've got it right." Paul whisked Monk off with the little broom. Falling dead hair drifted in a dead world. Monk dug in his pocket for the price and the tip. The money transaction tinkled in the dead afternoon. Then Harry and Monk were walking down the street together back toward the bar. "Nothing like a haircut," said Monk, "makes you feel like a new man." Monk always wore pale blue work shirts, sleeves rolled up to show off his biceps. Some guy. All he needed now was some female to fold his shorts and undershirts, roll his stockings for him and put them in the dresser drawer. "Thanks for keeping me company, Harry." "Sure, Monk, next time I get a haircut I'd like you to come along with me." "Maybe." Monk was walking next to the curb and it was like a dream. A yellow dream. It just happened. And Harry didn't know where the compulsion came from. But he allowed the compulsion. He pretended to trip and lunged into Monk. And Monk, like a top-heavy circus of flesh, fell in front of the bus. As the driver hit the brakes there was a thud, not too loud, but a thud. And there was Monk sitting in the gutter, haircut, mole, and all. And Harry looked down. The strangest thing. There was Monk's wallet in the gutter. It had leapt out of Monk's back pocket on impact and there it was in the gutter. Only it wasn't flat on the ground, it stood like a little pyramid. Harry reached down, picked it up, put it in his front pocket. It felt warm and full of grace. Hail Mary. Then Harry bent over Monk. "Monk. Monk, you all right?" Monk didn't answer. But Harry noticed him breathing and there was no blood. And, all of a sudden, Monk's face looked handsome and gallant. "He's fucked," thought Harry, "and I'm fucked. We're all just fucked in different ways. There's no truth, there's nothing real. There's nothing." But there was something. There was a crowd. "Back off," somebody said. "Give him air." Harry backed off. He backed off right into the crowd. Nobody stopped him. He was walking south. He heard the ambulance siren. It wailed along with his guilt. Then, quickly, the guilt vanished. Like an old war finished. You had to go on. Things continued. Like fleas and pancake syrup. Harry ducked into a bar he had never noticed before. There was a barkeep. There were bottles. It was dark in there. He ordered a double whiskey, drank it right down. Monk's wallet was fat and fulsome. Friday must have been payday. Harry slipped out a bill, ordered another double whiskey. He drained half, waited in homage, then took the rest, and for the first time in a long time he felt very good. Late that afternoon Harry walked down to the Groton Steakhouse. He went in and sat at the counter. He'd never been in there before. A tall, thin, nondescript man in a chef's hat and a soiled apron walked up and leaned over the counter. He needed a shave and smelled of roach spray. He leered at Harry. "You come in for the job?" he asked. "Why the hell is everybody trying to put me to work?" thought Harry. "No," Harry answered. "We have an opening for a dishwasher. 50 cents an hour and you get to grab Rita's ass every once in a while." The waitress walked by. Harry looked at her ass. "No, thanks. Right now, I'll take a beer. In the bottle. Any kind." The chef leaned closer. He had long nostril hairs, powerfully intimidating, like an unscheduled nightmare. "Listen, fucker, you got any money?" "I got it," said Harry. The chef hesitated for some time, then walked off, opened the refrigerator and yanked a bottle out. He snapped the cap off, walked back to Harry, banged the brew down. Harry took a long drink, set the bottle down gently. The chef was still examining him. The chef couldn't quite make it out. "Now," said Harry, "I want a porterhouse steak, medium well done, with French fries, and go easy on the grease. And bring me another beer, now." The chef loomed before him like an angry cloud, then he cleared off, went back to the refrigerator, repeated his act, which included bringing the bottle and slamming it down. Then the chef went over to the grill, threw on a steak. A glorious pall of smoke arose. The chef stared at Harry through it. Why he dislikes me, thought Harry, I have no idea. Well, maybe I do need a haircut, plenty off everywhere, please, and a shave, and my face is a bit beat up, but my clothes are fairly clean. Worn but clean. I am probably cleaner than the mayor of this fucking city. The waitress walked up. She didn't look bad. Nothing extra but not bad. She had her hair piled up on top of her head, kind of wild, and she had ringlets hanging down the sides. Nice. She leaned forward over the counter. You didn't take the dishwasher's job. I like the pay, but it isn't my line of work. What's your line of work? I'm an architect. You're full of shit, she said and walked off. Harry knew he wasn't much good at small talk. He found that the less he talked the better everyone felt. Harry finished both beers. Then the steak and fries arrived. The chef slammed them down. The chef was a great slammer. It looked like a miracle to Harry. He went to it, cutting and chewing. He hadn't had a steak in a couple of years. As he ate he felt new strength entering his body. When you didn't eat often it was a real event. Even his brain smiled. And his body seemed to be saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. Then Harry was finished. The chef was still staring at him. Okay, said Harry, I'll have the same thing all over again. You'll have the same thing all over again. Yeah. The stare turned into a glare. The chef walked over and threw another steak on the grill. And I'll have another beer, please. Now, Rita. The chef yelled, give him another beer. Rita came up with the beer. For an architect, she said, you suck a lot of suds. I'm planning on erecting something. Ha. Like you could. Harry worked on the beer. Then he got up and walked to the men's room. When he got back he finished the beer off. The chef came out and slammed the new plate of steak and fries in front of Harry. The job's still open if you want it. Harry didn't answer. He began on the new plate. The chef walked over to the grill where he continued to glare at Harry. You get 2 meals, the chef said, and the grab. Harry was too occupied with the steak and fries to answer. He was still hungry. When you were on the bum, and especially when you were drinking, you could go for days without eating, oftentimes not even wanting to, and then, it struck you. An unbearable hunger. You began to think of eating everything and anything. Mice, butterflies, leaves, pawn tickets, newspaper, corks, whatever. Now, working on the second steak, Harry's hunger was still there. The French fries were beautiful and greasy and yellow and hot, something like sunlight, a nourishing and glorious sunlight one could bite into. And the steak was not just a slice of some poor murdered thing, it was something dramatic that fed the body and the soul and the heart, that made the eyes smile, made the world not quite so hard to bear. Or be in. At that moment, death didn't matter. Then he was finished with the plate. All that was left was the bone of the porterhouse, and that had been stripped clean. The chef was still staring at him. I'll have it once more, Harry told the chef. Another porterhouse and fries and another beer, please. You will not. The chef screamed. You will pay up and get the hell out of here. He came around the grill and stood in front of Harry. He had an order pad. He scribbled angrily on the order pad. Then he tossed the check into the center of the dirty plate. Harry picked it up off the plate. There was one other customer in the restaurant, a very round pink man with a large head of uncombed hair dyed a rather discouraging brown. The man had consumed numerous cups of coffee while reading the evening paper. Harry stood up, dug out some bills, peeled off 2 and placed them down next to the plate. Then he walked out of there. Early evening traffic was beginning to clog the avenue with cars. The sun slanted down behind him. Harry glanced at the drivers of the cars. They seemed unhappy. The world was unhappy. People were in the dark. People were terrified and disappointed. People were caught in traps. People were defensive and frantic. They felt as if their lives were being wasted. And they were right. Harry walked along. He stopped for a traffic signal. And, in that moment, he had a very strange feeling. He felt as if he was the only person alive in the world. As the light turned green, he forgot all about that. He crossed the street to the other side and continued on.